talk for Mozilla Power 2013 held in Cairo, Egypt, but they are having some difficulties, technical difficulties, and we can't do this thing real time. So I thought I could just record a screencast, and that should be easy for them, and maybe that way you can check this thing out as well. So I've put these slides in bit.ly MP13 tech, so you can download them or just go there and click on the same links I'm going to click, and that would be, I think it's going to be useful for you rather than having to type in or search whatever in Google. So this talks about Mozilla's new technologies. Some things might not seem that new, but they are better than last year. So I thought that it would be interesting because they are exciting. It's always good to show how things are getting better. I am Soledad Penaez. I'm working as an apps engineer at Mozilla, and basically what I do is I build apps, identify pain points, try to make things easier for everyone, and remove those pain points, and basically help people build better apps and more apps. If you want to ping me, ask me any question about Mozilla or apps or whatever, you can tweet at me and Super Sole in Twitter. And you can also find me in the apps channel in IRC. Generally in London time and mostly just on during the week, the work week days. Um, so pretty much like about 10 to 7 in the morning, maybe a little bit earlier or later. I mean 7 in the evening, start at 10 in the morning. Anyway, so it's 2013 and we've been busy. It's really, really busy. So I'm going to go through every product or kind of main important thing that we are working on in Mozilla, so you don't get lost and kind of are able to follow what I'm talking about. So the first thing and kind of the jewel of the crown is Firefox, which is our browser. And it's getting better, safer, and faster. And why is it better? Because it's supporting more web APIs. Having support for more web APIs means for you as a developer that you can do more things. And I don't know any developer who doesn't like to do more things. So for example, this year brought us support for web audio. So before only Chrome and basically WebKit browsers could do web audio, now we can do that as well. So if you're a developer and want to build 3D audio thing, is you can do that knowing that Firefox supports that thing as well. So you can do things like real-time music processing, 3D positional audio games, and we're using WebRTC, which is another interesting new technology we're running now. You can use your webcam. Excuse me. You can use your webcam to connect with your friends with peer-to-peer connections. You don't have any servers snooping on your data in the meantime. You can even share files, and you can use that webcam on audio, image and audio streams using web audio and WebGL and do fancy stuff like I don't know, camera effects or put your image in 3D images as well, and also play with the web audio data. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be fancy. And it's not here yet because I just learned about the final support yesterday, but we also have support for the gamepad API, which means that you can plug any USB controller into your computer and just play games using the browser. I think this is really exciting because it finally validates the browser as a gaming platform. I tested that myself with an old Logitech controller and it worked perfectly, so that's really cool. More things about Firefox. It's better as CSS. We are implementing more parts of the standard, like for example the final flex layout. It's done and ready for you. It's unprefixed. We are also working on the grid layout, I've heard. We also have CSS variables in Nightly, which means that maybe in the future we wouldn't be needing less or SAS or any other CSS preprocessor, so that removes a step in your workflow. That's good. You never want to have too many steps. We also have support for the scope style attribute, which means that you can define CSS styles inside certain elements, and those styles won't be bleeding out the page, so they will only apply to that particular element. So that's good for components. More about Firefox. We have more HTML5 elements, and that gives you more expressivity and more easy to it's easy for you to define things in the page. So you have time, data, input type range, and input type number. Those latest two are really, really interesting for me because I build lots of musical stuff, and having proper controls is always good. So I'm glad that I don't have to use any external library for having ranges and numbers anymore. Firefox has more work done on web components. That means that we have templates now. We can have document register native as well. No need for shims anymore. And Shadow DOM is under development. That means once that's done, we can just your web components are going to be really proper components, and they will be bleeding out of their kind of root out of the page and affecting all other elements. So your CSS is going to be containing those elements, and it's going to make life easier for everyone building UI stuff. More Firefox stuff, better DevTools. That's really exciting for me because I am a developer, so I spend most of my time in DevTools. So now we've got improved debugger. That means that you can remove debug things, more things, or like you can connect to Android browsers or Firefox OS browser, or even just another browser in another computer. You can not only debug, but you can also do things that you couldn't do before or didn't really work that well, like changing style sheets on the fly, changing HTML. I mean, it's really exciting to be able to change things without having to recompile or reload things. You can also have black boxing. That means that if you trust a library or you're happy with whatever compile minify source you've got in your website, you can just say, "Hey, black box this thing. I trust this thing. I don't want to know what's going on inside. So just don't show it in the trace. Don't show it to me. Like I'm okay." So you can black box things, and you kind of related to this, we have now support for source maps. So if you're using a compiled version of a library and you have an error and you want to know why, but you don't want to use the uncompiled version because you're actually trying the minified version, you can click on that and it will use the source map data that your build tool generated to show you the source map, like the original source, and you can look at why is it failing, but you're still using the minified version, so you can figure out if maybe the minified version has some issues, and that way you can debug it without having to look at one letter variables and methods, which is kind of not very human friendly. And we also have better and new inspector, so you can now edit HTML, and which wasn't quite good before, but now it is. So you can do pretty much anything, like even add more elements and go crazy. You can also autocomplete CSS, which might sound silly, but it's actually really, really interesting because if you don't remember the name of the property, you can now rely somehow on autocomplete to do it for you. You can also inspect fonts, so you don't need to remember the names of the fonts. You can just look at them. Something quite interesting for graphics lovers, we've got the WebGL shader inspector, so you can edit things directly from our DevTools, which is quite fast. And we also have color and image previews. That means if a property is a color property, you will get a little color swatch appear nearby. So you can change the color by just clicking on the usual gradient selector instead of just having to type X colors. And you also have image previews. That means that if you hover over something, which is an image, you might get a little pop-up with the image, so you can see what's in each element. Something which I really liked is the new network monitor, and so you can track which requests are happening, and You can even get like the aesthetics, if it was good, how much it took to happen, and you can also filter like I'm not interested in this kind of request or something like that. I mean, it's really really useful, and it was something that was missing out in DevTools. And now profiling is easier. The profiler is being improved, so I really recommend you to use it. And something related to profiling is that we now have reflow logging. So generally, you don't want to be reflowing because it's going to harm the performance of your website. And reflow logging will say like, hey, 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 you're reflowing. So you can find out why, or at least detect when whatever you did was reflowing. And correct it so you don't reflow and you get a smooth experience in your website. And there are more things, but I really can't really cover everything. I mean, the DevTools team has been, I think, really, really busy. Big shout out to them. Good work, guys. More about Firefox. I'm going to drink some water, sorry. Firefox has safer securities now. It's got content security policy support. This was something that I think was only implemented in Firefox OS initially, but now it's present in Firefox desktop. I think Android. I'm not sure. It will just make sure that the security policy is is actually followed, so you don't get tricked into your app behaving unexpectedly. Now we also have mixed content blocking. That means if your website has HTTP content mixed with HTTPS, you will get a little warning and it will say like, hey, this HTTPS website is not fully secure, so maybe some of your data is being eavesdropped, so maybe you don't want that thing. So you will be aware of that, and that's good for security. And then you also have click to activate plugin functionality, so that's I think good and bad, but generally considering the state of plugins nowadays, that's good. More about Firefox, we've got faster Firefox. Starting with asm.js support, which I can talk about that later, and following with Australis being merged or baked into Nightly. Australis, or formerly Firefox UX, is the new future version of Firefox, and it's featuring an improved UI, and it generally is snappy and faster due to the way that it's built. And if you want to try it today, you just need to download any nightly from Firefox, and you can experience the feature in Firefox. I mean, I'm using that from I think 2 months ago, and I haven't had any issue, and I quite like it. So I just recommend it to you. If you download it and use it, you will be helping us make Australis happen before we expect it. So you will be helping us a lot. So to check it out as well. And now we go to Firefox for Android, which is beating all other browsers in Android land. If you go to the Google Play Store, you will see raving reviews. Like, people love it. We got lots of stars, and we are working so that we get even more stars. That's really our aim. Like, we want to have people happy about Android and Firefox for Android. It's got lots of mobile features like guest mode, so you can lend your device to a friend or someone, some relative, and they can just um, get a new profile that won't remember any of your browsing history. And once they are done, it just goes away. So it's really guest mode. It's like having like lending someone a blank slate browser and then just discarding everything. And it also has read later reader mode, I think, sharing and fast sharing. So it will use your last settings, and that's really really helpful. So it's really well integrated with Android, and it's also faster than ever. Like a year ago, they did this rewrite, and they just rewrote the whole UI stuff, using native C Java code, and now it's like once they have ironed all the bugs and stuff, it's really 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 performant. So I mean, it's my default browser in all my Android devices. It was before, it was faster than ever, but now it's really really good. So I can only recommend it thing. Also, it's pre-installed in some Kobo and Gigabyte devices. Like, I think those are tablets. So that it's going to actually offer a better experience than any Android stock browser. So I'm glad that those guys, I mean, people who buy those tablets are going to get a proper browser. Um, yeah, and Firefox OS, which is kind of another revolutionary thingy. Um, we are saying that the web is a platform. We launched in the Mobile World Congress in February, so that's when we are announced our released the thing. And we finally actually launched with payments and marketplace and everything in July. And now, like it was the first launch country. I think it was Spain. After from July to December is like 5 months. We have three official devices. Like you can hack your your current phone to use Firefox OS as well, but that's not supported officially. And we are in 14 countries and more to come. Like we are trying to extend our reach as much as we can. Our business development guys are working as much as they can, and hopefully it will be in your country soon. And more about Firefox OS, as we say, the web is a platform. We really mean it. So our web apps are open web apps. It's just JavaScript. So we are trying to introduce new web APIs for things that are not available yet with JavaScript. Like for example, mm, Davis storage and things like that. Those are not official APIs that you can use in a normal browser. So we are trying to standardize those APIs. We are working on drafting proposals and speccing and making sure that everyone, every browser, every vendor can implement those things, and we can be able at some point to write the same code and make sure that it works everywhere. Like have that peace of mind that a developer doesn't have to redo everything for every platform, and that's going to be making things more accessible for developers. Um, Related to that, we've got WebRT, which is the web runtime. It's about making sure that an open web app is really closed platform. Like you can run something and it works nicely, but then it also integrates nicely with the operating system, and it uses um, things like the uninstaller, the icons, and everything behaves nicely. So far, you can install things in Firefox for desktop, Firefox for Android, and Firefox OS, of course, and they will behave like native apps, or mostly native apps. That's what we are working on. Maybe in the future you can install the same app in Chrome OS and it will behave like a Chrome OS app as well, with all the modisms and all the kind of functionality that you would expect from a Chrome OS app, and it will be like working nicely with activities or intents or whatever. There's this nice example video by Bill Walker, which I think you will like. It's something that everyone likes when they see the video, so I just recommend you to watch this thingy. And this break is something that we are working in our team. Most of the people just came to Firefox OS and they're like, well, I am a web developer, I'm fine. So they just know their way around. But if you are a native developer or just a normal developer who's never done HTML, you might need some help. So we are developing this break, which is UI web component for modern web apps. So if you don't have any knowledge of UI, you can use our thing because it's going to help you build apps fast and concisely. And it's using a declarative syntax. So if you have any experience with HTML or XML, you will find it very easy to pick up. I mean, this is actually web components, as the name says, and custom web components, and we're using Extract2, Polyfill, and Shim, whatever is not ready yet, because web components are not yet ready. And local forage is another initiative we are kind of working on in our team. We're trying to make sure that writing offline capable apps is possible and it's easy and it's kind of a problem solved. So we are working on this library for making offline storage easy. It will use IndexedDB if it's available, and that in that case it will be async and it will be fast, so you can just trust it. And if it doesn't, you will fall back to local storage, which is the case for Safari currently. We are working on maybe a web SQL driver the feature, but for now we will just fall back to local storage. And now for something that is not in my team, we have the location service experiment or initiative or whatever. So the point of this thing is to crowdsource geolocation data. The way it works is volunteers like you and me just go and download this Moz Stumbler application for Android and just walk around your neighborhood. And as you do that, you start capturing data from routers and modems and other kind of Wi-Fi access points. You also get the data, the geolocation data, and just upload everything to our server. And then we will make it freely available for you. And why would you want this thing? It's for enabling indoor geolocation and faster. Like basically when you go and try to determine where you are and you're indoors, you can't really use the GPS because the GPS needs to connect to the satellite, and it's impossible to connect to the satellite because you're indoors, so you can connect. So Android and Apple do something like what we're building now, but our aim is to make this thing freely available and not depending on commercial services. So thanks to the help of everyone, we are building this huge database that can make things easy for everyone, not just people who want to pay for access to these databases. Okay, so apart from indoor location, you can also use this thing even if you're outdoors and you just want to grab an initial kind of positioning so you can have an idea where you are. So this is the faster initial lookups thing. And then on to more technical stuff. asm.js. asm.js is a fast low-level JS subset. That means that this low-level subset it's really, 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 really optimized, and it can get like really fast. The good thing is that compared to other things like NaCl, I don't know how it's called or pronounced in English, or Pepper from Chrome, this is compatible with our browsers. So if your browser doesn't have a plugin, it will still run because this is just JavaScript. It won't run as fast as in Firefox, which is like turbo enabled, and we are getting like near native speeds. We are getting more optimizations coming every day, I think, pretty much. So we're trying to use new features from JavaScript like float, arrays, and things like that that make things math, especially arithmetics, much faster, which is what asm.js is about. So that's why it's a subset. If you want to check out an example, you can check this Banana Bread game, which is a 3D shooter game running at amazingly fast frames per second. And the funny thing is that it's also able to run another game inside it, so another 3D game, which is Doom. So it's like kind of Inceptionist. More things. Shamway. Shamway is Flash in JavaScript. Like, we're getting rid of all plugins, and Flash is one of the most used plugins, so why not? We also like to ask ourselves, are we Flash yet? We are not yet, but we're quite close. If you check this demo, show us why it loads. This is just the Shamway running. It's on it. I'm not sure if it's broken. Okay, it's loading. So this is running Flash in JavaScript, and this is one of the bugs to the examples. I mean, it's just loading the SWF file, and as you can see, it's doing the best it can. I mean, considering I'm recording and screencasting this thing, but I think it's pretty impressive because Box2D is one of the most heavy, probably in processing things you can run in Flash. So yeah, do check it out as well. It's pretty exciting. More things. ES6 Advanced. ES6 is the new version of JavaScript. Is the future of JavaScript basically, and you can check it today. The features here. Some of those features have been implemented in Firefox already, so you can start experimenting. You can start checking that out and seeing how it works. So once ES6 is here, totally here, you could be able to use destructuring new operators make your code more functional instead of more imperative as it is now. Generators and defaults in parameters, and you can also use modules. So we will just stop arguing between require or node or whatever. Um, and if you want to learn about this thing, just watch this talk by Angus Scroll. Slides are here. It's a really good talk, and you will learn about the whole thing quite easily. And then Rust. Rust is this new experimental language we are developing. It's in Mozilla research. It's supposed to be safe, concurrent, and practical. Basically, it's a language for the 21st century compared to the earlier C++ or C language, which was thought or designed for other sorts of for non-parallel computers. So one of the examples is the servo parallel browser. It's supposed to be running in different threads because Rust is very well suited for multi-threading. And the good thing about this parallel browser is that it can be running heavy metal things in iframes and it will be working nicely. While if you try to do the same thing in a normal browser and you try to scroll in a page which has an iframe with very heavy things, you won't be able to do it smoothly, while Rust can do that with its parallelism. So that's really exciting. So if you're interested in languages, I just recommend you to look at that thing. And then on to more abstract things, Lightbeam. Who's tracking you? I'm not sure if you're aware of this thing, but while you browse the web, you get tracked. Lightbeam is a tool, a Firefox add-on for visualizing this kind of tracking, and you can just install it and start tracking or start browsing, and then after a while you just go to Lightbeam and say, oh my god, how many people is watching what I'm doing. So it's been downloaded 1 million times already, so I bet people are interested in knowing who's tracking them. And then together.js is a script that helps you turn any website into a collaborative experience, so you can make any website you got a different interactive thing. So you can, for example, turn an editor, a code editor like JS Fiddle, into an interactive code editor. So you can maybe pay a program or just help someone learn. Or, for example, if this is, I don't know, it's something you should try. Um, I'm also running out of time. Then WebMaker is kind of the umbrella term from Mozilla Foundation about teaching people the web. So they've got three initiatives like Thimble, which is like a code editor where you can just start teaching people how to use HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, and you don't need to install any editor. This is really good for workshops and things like that because you can trust that editor to work, and it also auto saves the stuff. You can even polish and remix things, and it's very easy to use and very reliable, and people like it because it's simple. We also have goggles, which is kind of an X-ray inspector for the web, so you can look at any website, see what's underneath. It's kind of an inspector, but for people who are not developers, so they can change image sources and that kind of things that for us, for developers, it kind of looks funny, but so easy, right? But for normal people, it's nothing short of amazing. And then finally, you've got Popcorn, which allows you to, in a kind of visual timeline like Adobe Premiere or After Effects, you can mix and remix anything from the web, like YouTube videos, images, music, I think as well, and kind of generate your own web movie based or built upon lots of other HTML stuff, which is interesting. It kind of shows the whole strength of the web is mixing and remixing from different sources. And then finally, you've got AppMaker, which is this um, experiment on making a tool for building apps visually and also teaching people how to build apps and all the paradigms of how apps are built. Like you've got events, you've got to react to events, you've got sources and things that receive the sources and inputs and outputs. I mean, it's very metaphoric, but for people who's never got any contact with apps, I think it's good because it doesn't enter into intricacies of source code, and it's all very visual. So if you're a visual person and you want to learn about app making, that might be interesting for you. And with that, I'm finishing, and I'm almost on 30 minutes. So I'm pretty impressed with my timing. Thank you, and if you have any questions, just ping me, and I will do my best to answer your questions. And thanks for having me.